fundamentally, ISGs are these sort of documents published by the NSA for different types of file types, and they go into very good set of details of how what you do with files, right? So they got these publications, which I'll walk you now through it, and they are very nice detailed documents that explain things. So if you go into the cyber security publications, there's tons of stuff in here. If you search for inspection and sanitization guides, you get to see there's a pile of them, right? So a good example, let's say the PNG. If you then get the file, what you get is a nice detailed document that talks about the PNG structure. So this talks about how you structure the history and how the actual PNG specification sort of works. And what's really cool about this is that it's not, in a way, a super detailed guidance on every single thing about how to build a PNG parser. You still have the official documentation for that, but it's one that is very focused on the malicious use, in this case, of PNGs. So it's focused on the malicious use of images and is used through file formats and so exploitations of the files, and then is through places that you can hide in the PNG that shouldn't be there, right? Some of these, PNG is a good example of. There's lots of areas that it's very loose and allows all sorts of data to be inserted and allows all sorts of things to occur, which from a security point of view, we don't want to, right? We want an image to be an image. We don't want the image to be, a zip or have all sorts of other payloads, which actually have, in the past been shown to deliver some spectacular exploits. So the structure of the PNGs kind of tends to follow, especially the most recent documents. This kind of, it starts with introduction, what it is, the kind of background of the file, and then the kind of the structure of this document tends to follow this idea that, defines the scope, then talks about literally the section 3 is that, the structure of PNG, and then the section 4 is really what we're looking for, because this contains very detailed sets of risks and then the actions that we should be taking to protect the file. So fundamentally, the objective here is to create safe files, right? The objective here is to be in a situation where, when there an exploit for a particular file, we are able to protect it, right? I can open a file, PNG, safely without having to worry about being exploited, right? And there's some cool examples, right, down here of vulnerabilities and situations where a particular exploit has actually caused all sorts of vulnerabilities being triggered in parsers. Actually, the one that I actually had some cool examples is actually the EXIF one. This one here. This one had some really cool examples of vulnerabilities that were actually triggered through this. So let me just quickly find it, and that's fundamentally what we're trying to prevent here. Right? What we're trying to prevent here is cases like this, right? So if you go to these files, you see that this is an example of hackers hiding malicious code in XIF data files. So this is an example of, this actually was a really cool exploit in PHP, because basically what happened was they were able to create an image that actually on the extended information filter, whatever that thing is, the part of the file, they're actually able to put, in fact, you can see here on the camera model, it was actually able to put eval base64 decode JavaScript. So this was then triggered, and this was actually executed by PHP like this. So when you actually one of the readers that executed this, when you actually execute this stuff, this will actually trigger that particular base64 encoded JavaScript, which actually was running, if I'm not wrong, on a server side, which is basically what you don't want, right? Because you now have remote code execution on the other side. And then there's other cases of, for example, vulnerabilities like, for example, this one, that's denial of service, that's remote code execution. So this is really nasty, right? So this is basically a code overflow and basically code execution that arbitrary code by processing a crafted image, right? So that means that in this kind of vulnerability, you just by opening up the image with a parser that is vulnerable to this particular buffer overflow, you get remote code execution. So what we want is to make sure that we clean the file before it gets there. We want to sanitize the file, removing all this stuff before we kind of got there. And you sort of can see this in action with our engine. So we, Glasswall has an engine which you can try with file drop or the forensic workbench. They're two different versions. This one basically gives you the, well, I actually need to drag and drop a file here. It gives you a version where you can what's it called, just run on Azure, where this one, let me actually write this one here, where you basically let me show an example of kind of the kind of things that you don't want to see in a file. So this is actually a PDF that has some JavaScript and some embedded files. And what we want to do here, so this would be on a PDF kind of format, is that we could see that it basically has, this is the result of the analysis. So we could see that it had JavaScript embedded, it had metadata, which is the kind of things we want to reduce. But also you can see that our engine actually picked up that there are a lot of things that we have to remove that shouldn't be there, right? So in fact, this particular case, there's actually an embedded file on it, which could be a virus, could be stuff. So we actually remove that. But the logic is all of these should be pointing to an ISG. And that's kind of also our interest in this, which is that we want to make sure that every time we do something to a file, we can point to an ISG and we can have a set of very specific use cases for actually how it works. So to kickstart this process, they basically downloaded everything from that was available on the NSA website, because it's actually a pain to get. And actually there's some interesting race conditions with it anyway. But the point is to make sure that we got all the information available. And there's an interesting question on some of these file formats. Some of them might need updating, but this is also, as a community, we should be collaborating. So each of these folders contains the ISG for that file as published by the NSA, right? Which is basically all those documents I was showing you, which are really, really cool documents, really well written. So for example, on the PNG, you got the file here. And just to give you the full loop, what I was trying to do, and this is what I need help, right, is to create these PDF, markdown files, which is basically, literally markdown, right? So you could see that it's just basically nice markdown code. And then the logic is start to extract those things, for example, like data attack and the stuff to do, the chunk format, stuff like data hiding, validate, remove, reject, right? And then the logic is to take this and then maybe create something like a JSON file that now has the source, what it is, and kind of those recommendations in now a consumable kind of format where we can now create specific keys so that when we look at writing tests for this and writing specific set of use cases, we can reference and say, look, the reason why we're validating this is because we following the 4.1 PNG 4.11 validation sequence, or the reason why this file got rejected is because it actually didn't conform to this. So that's kind of the sort of loop, which is to create a set of industry sort of standard files that we can all collaborate and agree. And then so even from a tools point of view, we can measure which tools work well, even open source tools, right? We should be running open source tools through this and validation tools, etc. But also that gives us a really good benchmark, but also a really good set of test cases to make sure that the tools are doing what they're supposed to be doing, but also that we can focus on the places where we know from a security point of view, we get the most value from actually providing that guidance.
I'm actually thinking in terms of sort of extracting information from the PDF files, right? And some of these are quite large. Would it not be sort of worth having something that can translate a PDF into a different format and then searching for those sort of recommendation sections? Is that not all the information you actually need from this? That's essentially the checklist, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the problem you have, and this is a good example, right? The problem you have is that these documents are not normalized, right? So there's an argument to be said that we should be able to recreate these documents from here, right? In a way, the way when we explore with the idea of creating the Jira tickets, right, to store the data, right?
Yep.
So the problem you have here, I'll give you an example, right? So if you look at this, you're going, oh, okay, this is pretty cool, right? So there you go, a PNG, there's the overview, there's the risks and validation. Like that is super clean, right? Look,
Yep.
you've got an introduction, right? You got the data attack, and you'll see that this kind of, it goes in multiple bits, right? So sometimes they have, look, see, so this one, like you got data hiding, data attack, right? And it gives you the recommendations, right? What you do, which one of these, and in fact, even this one, I will argue that you should split, right? This and that, right? Like, so even this is not normalized. Like, okay, so when I'm doing this, am I addressing with data hiding or I'm addressing a data attack, right? So, it's kind of like, okay, so this is why. Is this for validation or is this for things? So even this is not very well normalized. But if you look above, this guy doesn't have a good introduction. Look at the introduction. It's like literally, that's the introduction, right? So in this case, we don't want to put all of these, right, in, what's it called? All of that. We don't want to put all of that in a JSON file.
Yeah, but the sort of the bullet points, are actually all covered under, is it risks and recommendations, is it not?
Yes. So yeah, what we could do is extract all the risks and recommendations in one go. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that you can.